Hey guys, in this video we'll have a look at the Mavllos Delicacy, we'll review its technical performance and its performance on the water, and we'll talk about its pros and cons. Let's have a look. Delicacy is a 6-foot rod, so it measures in at about 1.8 meters, and is rated for 0.6 grams all the way up to 10 grams, depending on which one of the two tips you're using. The blank is a more traditional regular carbon fiber wrap. It doesn't have any fancy weird cross wraps or reinforcements or anything like that. But I do very much think that this older style of carbon fiber wrap is very aesthetically pleasing, especially as you can see here as it refracts light. It's very interesting and very beautiful. So I'm a big fan of kind of old school carbon fiber wrap. The new sexy wraps with the weirdnesses and cross wraps are very interesting, but this always kind of makes me feel nostalgic about rods, and these perform very well. The build quality of the rod is very solid. The foam isn't particularly expensive. It's kind of hard, but it holds up very well. This rod has seen about 7 months of use now, and as you can see, it's got a couple of patches I've rubbed on or put some wear on it. Especially here, it's seen a little bit of abuse, but that's just me using it and actually field testing the hell out of it. The reel seat is very nice and comfortable. I have Sasquatch size hands, and even with my very large hands, the Delicacy's grip is adequate to keep a decent grip on it and control my rod fairly well. It's not giant, it's not huge, but it's more than good enough, so I kind of like that. What makes the Delicacy quite unique, or I haven't seen on other rods before, is this little aluminium end cap it has here. I have scratched up a little bit, as you can see there, from resting the rod upright. So that's kind of interesting and unique. The wrapping on it is quite cool, and it has this neon greenish chartreuse-ish color. And the guides on it are not bad quality at all. They're not Fuji guides, they're not C guides, but they perform perfectly adequately. If you'll have a look at the smaller guides, you'll notice that there is a little bit of excess epoxy. It's a little bit thicker than it absolutely needs to be, and it's not magnificently neat. It could have been a neater job, but it's a relatively budget rod, so I'm not going to hold that against them. The guides are very small and ride fairly low on the rod blank. But the biggest upside of this rod is the fact that it comes with two tips. The first being a hollow carbon fiber tip that is fairly stout, and it's more of a medium to medium fast action, or moderate to moderate fast action, while the solid carbon fiber tip, the one that has the white section on it, is a much, much faster tip. So the white section is very fast and it's solid, and it joins onto the carbon or hollow carbon fiber section. Well, let's count them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guides in. That's a much faster, much more whippy action, where the rest of it then is a more slower action. So this would definitely be a fast to maybe, I wouldn't call it extra fast, just a fast action tip, with the hollow carbon fiber section below that. So the fast tip is rated down to 0.6 grams up to 8, where the hollow, more moderate action tip is rated 0.8 grams up to 10 grams. Now let's look at the technical performance of the rod. First, we're going to do some static load testing, where I loaded up the rods with 300-gram weight, mounted at a 45-degree angle, and I specifically chose the 300-gram weight as that's what loaded the tip of the rod all the way level to the reel seat. As you can see here, we're loading up the fast tip, and we're loading up that with 300 grams, so we're flexing it a little bit and then loading it to the full extent. As you can see, the tip loads up way before anything else, and that's very whippy for casting small, light lures. And then once we get past about halfway, then the rest of the blank starts to load up. So it's quite a fast action, and it's ideal for casting small, very light, soft plastics with single hooks, where you need sensitivity to detect bites. If we look at the moderate hollow tip next, you'll see that it loads up 3 or 4 guides in as soon as we put some weight on it. But as soon as we get halfway through loading our weight onto it, it really starts to bend much lower into our blank. So that's why I think this is much more of a moderate action. Now, taste is very much a thing. I'm not going to argue here. That's why I do these tests visually, so you can see what you think the action looks like. Now we move on to the distance testing section. We cast a selection of weights, 1 gram, 3 gram, and 5.9 grams, and we cast each weight 8 times. And from that, we calculated an average. So the Delicacy cast the 1 gram weight, an average of 12.8 meters. costs the 3-gram weight an average of 19.9 meters, and it costs the 5.9-gram weight an average of 26.7 meters. Interestingly enough, between the 1-gram and 3-gram weight, we gained 36% in distance for a 300% increase in weight, while we only gained 25% distance between 3 grams and 5.9 grams for a 197% increase in weight. That would suggest our rod is slightly more efficient in the lower and mid-range. And lastly, we did some dynamic load testing. So we took a weight of 3 grams and did a slow-mo recording of the rod casting this weight. The point of this test is to see how the rod loads up under an average weight and to see how quickly the rod recovers after we cast the weight. This test is very much open to interpretation. I simply include it because it's visually interesting and it gives you a better idea of how the rod actually handles weight and how fast you can expect it to recover. Let's look at the footage from on the water while we discuss the pros, the cons, and who should buy this rod. What does this rod do well? Well, almost everything. It's very sensitive, specifically the solid carbon fiber tip, and the moderate tip loads up very well to keep fish pinned. So as a general purpose rod, this does an excellent job of nearly everything. It will not do small stream fishing well. 6 foot is not the length for you. You're going to get your tip snagged a lot, and I think the rod's just a little bit too long for that. But other than that, I think the rod is an excellent general purpose rod because it offers you a lot of versatility with the fast tip for small or soft plastics and the hollow moderate tip for crankbaits. For a starting angler, this will give you a lot of versatility and allow you to experiment with both a fast and a moderate tip to see what you like best. And if you're a more experienced angler and traveling, this one rod gives you a lot of versatility to do different things by packing less stuff. All right, time for pros and cons. I think aesthetically speaking, the rod is minimalist enough to be really interesting and kind of be stylish, but not shout and be overbearing in any way, shape, or form. So aesthetically speaking, I really love it. When it comes to design stuff, I kind of really hate the aluminum cap on the end, simply because very often you want to stand up your rod next to something, and this hard end slips very easily on hard surfaces. So I have accidentally dropped my rod before because of this hard little tip. Yes, it makes your rod end slightly more durable, but it also causes you to drop your rod quite often. The rod seat or reel seat is very comfortable. I very much love that. Little bit of red accent there is very sexy. This rod does not come with a bait keeper. I did add that myself, but I very much prefer rods with bait keepers. Otherwise, I have to end up adding my lure, snagging my lure onto the rod eye, and I don't like doing that simply because eyes do break more often than you'd like them to. The chartreuse wrapping is interesting without being overbearing, so I'm kind of happy with that. The epoxy job is neat enough, and it doesn't really offend me in any way, shape, or form, though I do feel they overdid the epoxy ever so slightly, so it ends up adding rod weight more than it needs to. But that's a very, very minor gripe. When it comes to guide count, the solid carbon fiber tip does have one extra guide, which I think is just enough to make or to compensate for the fact that it's slightly more flexy. That's one thing I did notice with a lot of Mavllos, or all of the Mavllos rods I do own, is that the guide count is particularly low. It's less of an issue on the Delicacy model. Some of the other rods do have fewer guides, and it's more of an issue there where your line does touch the blank more often than it particularly should. But on this model, it's less of an issue for me. Would I like to have at least one more guide on there? Yeah, I definitely would. But build quality wise and number of guide wise for the amount of money I pay for this, I absolutely love this rod for that. It offers exceptional value for money because it performs way above what you expect it to for that price point. I do tend to prefer the hollow carbon fiber tip as I throw crankbaits more often than I do soft plastics, and I really like that loading down lower into the blank of the hollow carbon fiber tip. It's definitely my go-to tip between the two. Build quality is above average. For the price, it's really just an excellent performing rod. Would I buy it again? Absolutely. I really love this rod. Enough so much so that I'm very likely to buy a second one, just in case this should ever go out of production. I like it enough that I want to buy another one to have as a backup. So would I buy it again? Absolutely. I recommend this rod very highly for anyone that wants to get into BFS for the first time. The ability to have both a fast action and a moderate action in one rod for under $50 really is exceptional value for money. So, do I recommend this rod? Yes, very, very highly. In fact, this is usually the first rod I would recommend for anyone starting in BFS because it offers such versatility and value for money. If you like this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. If you think it sucks, give it a thumbs down. And if you like this sort of content, both where I use these tools practically and give you an idea what they perform like in the field, go ahead and subscribe because I will be bringing out a lot more content like this. Have a good day.